All right, now joining us on the broadcast, we've got retired Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis, who's a military expert and also the host of Daniel Davis Deep Dive on YouTube. Colonel Davis, thank you very much indeed for joining us here on WION. It is day 15 of the war, and the Americans have staged an attack on the Karg Island. This is being done in order to, one expects, to try and break the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. In your assessment, how much success can the Americans actually have in trying to take over the Karg Island, and what does it mean for this war?
Honestly, I think it means absolutely nothing. It has no relation whatsoever to having the Strait of Hormuz opened up and for oil passage to go through the Gulf, into the Gulf of Oman and out to the rest of the world. I mean, the Karg Island is way up in the northern part, close to the Iranian shoreline there. And President Trump in his Truth Social announcement last night said that they were only going after military targets, not any of the oil infrastructure. The images that were released by CENTCOM today of the strike show some pretty minor damage, not the massive damage that President Trump claimed that it was. And then he asked them in that Truth Social that you should lay down your arms, the IRGC, and surrender. But I mean, it was such a small strike, so I don't know what the intent was, but the result is going to be virtually nothing. It's no effect whatsoever to the Iranian control of the Strait of Hormuz, which is everything depends on that.
Now, Colonel Davis, you would know this better than anyone else. The fact that there was going to be a war between Iran and the United States was something that both nations had been preparing for. They'd been running simulations, war games, etc., etc. And in the event of a war such as this, the first expectation was that the Iranians will shut down the Strait of Hormuz. Now, it's been 2 weeks since the Iranians have shut the Strait of Hormuz, but the American side, especially the military establishment, led by Pete Hegseth, seems to be completely clueless as to how to respond to the shutting down of Strait of Hormuz. Why is there what appears to be a lack of preparation to deal with the Strait of Hormuz being shut down?
Well, I won't say it's the lack of preparation, because that implies that there is a path to open it up if you had been prepared, and I don't see one. Once the Iranian side decides that they're going to make the political decision, and we have to understand this is a political issue, not so much a military one, because they have the resources that they can shut it down. The only way you can militarily overcome that is to just completely destroy the military of Iran in its totality. And I'm talking about, on the land, you would have to, hundreds of miles of Iranian shore would have to be conquered. And I'm talking like scores of kilometers inland, not just the hundreds along the shoreline. You have to take out all of their missile batteries, because even from the distant side of their country, they could still take out the ships in the Gulf. They have torpedoes. They have some submarines. There's so many things that they can use to keep the thing shut down. By all they have to do is hit some of the tankers going through there. So it's a political decision. The big failure of the United States, on the other hand, was to start a war and without realizing the likelihood that they would do exactly what they said they would do. And now that that's actually happened, there are no obvious off-ramps. There are no obvious paths, military or diplomatically, that you can get the Gulf open back up. And because now the Iranians are saying, because you started this war, now then we're going to have very high demands for ending it, to include reparations and international guarantees that this doesn't ever happen again. And right now, those aren't even on the table. So it seems to me that we're locked in for a long period of time here.
Right now, another bit of report that has come in the last 24 hours is that the United States is sending, some say 2,500 Marines, some say 5,000 Marines to the Gulf, along with USS Tripoli, which is at this moment somewhere in East Asia. In your assessment, throwing in 5,000 Marines into this Gulf war, is there any change that can be effected militarily as to the situation on the ground there?
Zero. And in fact, I hope this is just a posturing thing, that perhaps somebody in the administration thinks that this is going to scare somebody in Iran. It's not going to. But I hope that's their thought, as opposed to that they actually plan on using these Marines, because having a single Marine Expeditionary Unit, an MEU, to go in and try to do anything on the ground, when basically the totality of the Iranian armed forces could just focus all of its concentrated fire on that one element, wherever it would be trying to do anything, it would just overwhelm our defenses. I mean, it would be near suicide to attempt any kind of a landing, whether that's on Karg Island, whether it's on some of the islands in the horseshoe of the Strait of Hormuz, somewhere else on the shore. I don't know. But even if you succeeded and you got a toehold somewhere without the capacity to expand that bridgehead and to sustain it, there's no value in it, and it would come at great cost. No matter what, it would come at great cost to the United States. So I hope that this is just some sort of posturing, because if we actually try and use our forces, it's going to be a bloodbath, and it won't accomplish anything to end the war.
All right, so the war has now gone on for 2 weeks. Today is day 15 of the war. It's now being said that the Americans and the Israelis are running short of these precision weapons, and therefore they could be relying on what are known as these dumb bombs, gravity bombs that can be dropped on targets. But to do that, they need air superiority. In your assessment, in the last 2 weeks of the war, have the Americans and the Israelis managed to get some level of air superiority over Iranian skies?
The claim is we have air supremacy. That's the claim by both Israel and the United States. I don't know if it's supremacy being that you have destroyed all of the air defense capacity of the territory. I think it's more likely that we have air superiority, which means that it's a contested area, but we have superiority in certain areas, and we can create pathways that we can get aircraft in, a certain bands for certain missions. So I don't think I doubt anyway that it's air supremacy, but it definitely is superiority, because you see a lot of the damage being done to Iran from the air, whether that's some drones, and apparently a lot of drones have been shot down, some of the MQ-9 Reapers, which are really, really important. But so far, only, I guess, 4 or maybe 5 aircraft have been dropped, and we claim that all of those are either friendly fire or an accident. You can take that for what it's worth, but there haven't been a lot. So that implies that Iran doesn't have, great air defenses anyway. So it's definitely air superiority on the western side.
All right. Now, Donald Trump, a couple of days back, said that he acted on the advice of his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, who hasn't got any military credentials to speak of, and Steve Witkoff, another good buddies of Donald Trump, who is a real estate developer and again has no military credentials to speak of. So the fact that the Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces is acting on the advice of the likes of Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, how concerned are you about the decisions that Donald Trump has been taking?
Well, now we can imagine, and I do have pretty good knowledge that there are plenty of people who are qualified that are in some of these discussions. Obviously, General Kane, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Cooper, the commander of the Central Command. So we know that those guys are part of these conversations here, and there are certainly others that are involved as well. But the fact that President Trump himself is the one that mentioned when he made decision on war-making decisions, it wasn't the CIA director, which should have been one of the first ones mentioned, because they know the capabilities of our side and of the military capabilities of the other side. That's one of the primary functions of having a CIA, or the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, or maybe the chief of staff of the Air Force or the Army or the Marines or something like that. Or maybe Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence. Those should have been the ones that are in there. And because he relies on these guys who have more of a feeling, which President Trump himself said he bases his decisions off of, and they're focused on financial matters, and they don't have any knowledge about the pros and cons of any military capability, and have probably no knowledge about the Iranian military capacity. That's got to be the last guys you should be listening to when it comes to war and peace issues, not the first ones on your mind.
Indeed. Colonel Davis, do continue to stay on with this. Meanwhile, let's in fact get some breaking inputs that have just come in.